Welcome. Anyway, little piano introduction for our first teaching moment. Let me look at the correct place. And welcome to our second week in our e-learning adventure, April 6th through 10th. This is a lesson that I wanted to share with you. A couple of quick things I'm going to go over with as we delve into Robert Frost. There are glasses in my hand. I just wanted to show you these because we are learning together how to do this new life. And so I had to order these blue light glasses to protect my eyes because now I'm staring at a screen of some sort, to different computers and cell phones and iPads and all that all day long, day and night. So I ordered these through Amazon and they're pretty cool. They also make me feel smarter. But anyway, we're going to delve into Robert Frost. So I'm excited about that because, you know, I love poetry. And so I wanted to share a couple things with you. So for this week, everything is laid out framing poetry. So even the quote of the week actually comes from Robert Frost's most famous, well, one of his most famous poems. You've probably at least heard the name Robert Frost, and you certainly probably found it familiar when I shared the quote of the week with you, which was about the road less taken. And I took the road less taken, it says, and that has made all the difference. It's actually the ending of a very famous poem by Robert Frost called The Road Less Traveled. And I have such good memories of it. It's such a staple in poetry, in American poetry, and actually globally is so well respected. That song is used, the ideas, the principles from that poem is used in songs. It's used as a colloquialism. People will say, well, you should take that road less traveled. You know, it's all based on Robert Frost, that poem, and it's so powerful. And I remember it all the way from elementary school. When you sing in choirs, you oftentimes are actually singing songs that is putting music to famous poetry. And I remember that one saying something like, it had like it was in the minor key, and it had an oriental Asian sound to it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. I remember that. That's the first stanza from that poem. If you take a look at that poem, it's rich in metaphors, it's rich in studying nature, but talking about a deeper meaning in life, something more profound about life, but it's using nature kind of like a juxtaposition, and it's just beautiful, classic Robert Frost. Robert Frost is known for his imagery, and you see a lot of imagery in The Road Less Traveled. He's known not only for that, his poetry lends well to music because his poetry does have a certain form. There's a lot of, it's actually referred to as being lyrical. That's an important word for you to jot down. It's known as being lyrical poetry. When you think lyrical, you think maybe even like dancing, and it's beautiful and there's nature involved. There's a lot of imagery. It's musical. That's what makes it lyrical in nature, because he has a set meter and rhythm, which will be important as you study his poetry. It lends itself to music. So you can see that in The Road Less Traveled, of course, and you can see that in the poetry that we're going to jump into, okay? Some more information for your notes. I'm going to ask for you to send me a copy of your notes, things that you're writing down as I share this information with you in this short teaching video. More information about Robert Frost, classic American poet. Our junior year, we get to study American writers. We've read a classic American novel, The Great Gatsby. He is a classic, Robert Frost, a classic American poet. He actually spent a lot of time in England, but he was born in California. He spent a lot of his time here, then in England, and then back here in the United States. And he's known for many, many poems, not just The Road Less Traveled. But again, a lot of his poetry lends itself to music. So next week, I'll be sharing with you a musical element to the poem that we're going to study this week, which is Choosing Something Like a Star. That's the poem that we're going to be studying. It's a little less formal in the way that it's broken up. When you first look at it, it's not divided into stanzas. You will be looking at a rhyme scheme, but the rhyme scheme won't be per per stanza, excuse me. So when you're studying it, when you answer the questions for the poetry, it'll ask you about Robert Frost's form. And one of the ways that it asks you, so you want to jot down, is sound devices. So it's going to ask you, what sound devices do you see in Robert Frost's poem, Choose Something Like a Star? Sound devices refer to the meter, not the meter, excuse me. It refers to the repetition that you hear in the poetry. It refers to assonance, which, remember, assonance just really is a fancy term for rhyme, because it's when the inside sounds of a word, the vowel sounds of a word, are alike. It's the repetition of like vowel sounds. That's rhyme. So repetition, rhyme, alliteration, when the starting sounds of the words are the same. And of course, that, alliteration, assonance, repetition, and rhyme. Yeah, well, rhyme is assonance. So that's basically what it's asking for. So in a nutshell, it's kind of asking you, is there a rhyme scheme? Is there a repetition that you see in it? Is there alliteration? And even you can jot down rhythm, the meter. Is it iambic? Do you see that in this poetry? Even though this poem is one long poem instead of being divided into stanzas, okay? So it's going to be interesting, because not only did I give you Choose Something Like a Star, you're going to analyze that and answer those questions, but then I also, with that poem, gave you a poem, Bright Star. And Bright Star is written by John Keats. John Keats is not an American poet. He's an English poet. But he was of great influence to Robert Frost. So Robert Frost's, when he writes Choose Something Like a Star, you will see a reference to Bright Star. That is called allusion, an important word for your notes. Remember, we've talked about allusion being a reference to a standard piece or classic piece of writing that people would be familiar with. In this case, Robert Frost uses an allusion to John Keats' poem about the same subject, a star. So you'll have that poem as well. You'll answer some questions about his poetry, and then the fun comes in comparing those two poems about a star and what is about. What is this imagery about? What is the poet trying to say? How are they different, and how are they alike? So with your discussion post, which is a reflection of the quote of the week, which comes from A Road Less Traveled, and with your questions on Choose Something Like a Star and Bright Star, as well as the comparison, as well as vocabulary for Choose Something Like a Star, which I'm about to read, you have a full week of poetic analysis that'll be taking place. Let me see. I'm going to look at my notes to see what else. Oh, by the way, forgot to tell you, fun fact about Robert Frost, his poetry is so famous, such a big part of American culture, that a lot of people, like I said, they draw allusion to his poems, like A Road Less Traveled. And another poem, Nothing Gold Ever Stays. I think that's the title. And if that sounds familiar, that is because that is referred to, there's allusion in a very famous book that you read in middle school, I think. I remember teaching it to my 7th or 8th graders, The Outsiders. So in The Outsiders, there is the reference to Nothing Gold Ever Stays. The poem is actually in the book, and there's some really cool images that we get from that. So, and that's by Robert Frost, that poem as well, in case you want to look it up. So I want to share with you Choose Something Like a Star by Robert Frost. I'm going to go ahead and read it aloud. Choose Something Like a Star by Robert Frost, which you have in your resources in Schoology. But I want you to hear it, and then I'll close this lesson reminding you the things to look for as you study poetry. O star, the fairest one in sight, we grant your loftiness the right. To some obscurity of cloud it will not do to say of night. Since dark is what brings out your light, some mystery becomes the proud. But to be wholly taciturn in your reserve is not allowed. Say something to us we can learn by heart, and when alone repeat. Say something, and it says, I burn. But say with what degree of heat? Talk Fahrenheit, talk centigrade. Use language we can comprehend. Tell us what elements you blend. It gives a strangely little aid, but does tell something in the end. And steadfast as Keats' eremite, not even stooping from its sphere, it asks a little of us here. It asks of us a certain height. So when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, we may choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. So I'm not going to jump into analysis yet. I want you to do that as you are reading it to yourself and as you are answering these guided questions to help you. Even if you need some help with the vocabulary, just a few that are little, not as often used in our current culture. So that you will find in vocab.com, vocabulary practice, and a quiz that'll come on Friday. So do work on that. I would suggest you do so daily so that you get that terminology and you do well on the quiz, which I will take that grade from vocab.com. Of course, as anything else, just let me know if you have questions as you're working, if anything is not working. The week is a full week, so you have until midnight Sunday to get all of this done. And on Friday, we'll have a conference with any Q&A that we need about these assignments, and that's all on Schoology. All right? Well, nice talking to you, kind of. I'm going to get back to work and staring at some screens even as I edit this video. Well, just put a name on it and put it in YouTube. Love y'all.